In this simple stitch series video, I'm going to show you how to make the faux cable knit stitch. Sometimes it's also called a mock cable stitch, and it's called that because it provides a pattern where it looks like you've made cables, but you actually have not used a cable needle at all. This pattern is just knit with regular needles, and it provides a fabric that lays pretty flat. This is the right side, and this here is the wrong side. In fact, on the wrong side, it almost looks like a 2:2 rib pattern. I have here just a couple what I call my skinny hats, because this pattern does have a lot of give, or the fabric that it produces does have a lot of give, and I just like it because it's really nice and simple to knit up, and I'll show you how to do that in just a minute. One quick point, I had used this pattern lots of years ago to make a poncho, which is pretty worn down now, pretty well used, and I'd used a variegated yarn for that. This was a sort of a cotton blend denim variegated yarn that I'd used, and you'll notice that, the pattern the cables don't look as great with the variegated yarn, or they're not as distinctive than they are with a solid color. So I think the pattern works a little bit better if you use solid colors, but doesn't hurt. You can always try a variegated color as well. It doesn't matter. I do know they were a little bit more distinctive when I first knit this, but of course over the years, with use, and of course my cats now love to sit on this poncho that I knit up. So just a quick, just my opinion. I think it looks better with a solid color. Okay, so let's look at the pattern, and I've provided the pattern in the description field below. This is just my cheat sheet, and I realized I had some little errors there, so I've done a few fixes here, but just if you look at the pattern in the description field, it tells you the details. And the stitch is actually knit over a even number of stitches. It's actually a multiple of 4 stitches plus 2 stitches. Now, there are variations of this faux cable knit pattern, variations where you can have a larger gap between the cables, you can have a smaller gap between the cables. And so in the description field, I've provided 2 variations, but I'm really only going to demonstrate for you this first variation. Once you know how to do that, you should be able to do the other variations as well. It's really very simple, and all you really need is a knit stitch and purl stitch knowledge of how to do those 2 stitches. So I would put this at a basic level. Okay, now it is done over a repeat of 4 rows, and I've already done a few repeats here, but I'm going to go ahead and get started with the first row. This is the right side and this is the wrong side. So row 1, you start off with just a purl 2, knit 2. So insert your needle and purl 1, purl 2, knit 1, knit 2. And that's all you're doing. Just remember, when you do the purl, if you're new to knitting, when you do the purl stitch, make sure you bring the yarn to the front. When you do the knit stitch, you bring the yarn to the back. So purl stitch, yarn to the front, and purl, purl, yarn to the back, and knit, knit. And so that's all is the first row. You start with a purl 2, then you do a knit 2, purl 2 all the way to the end, which means you will end on a purl 2. That's row 1. Turn your work. Next row, you're doing the exact opposite. You start with a knit 2, and then you do a purl 2, knit 2 all the way to the end. Sometimes the stitch falls off, and then I'm lazy to put the stitch back on, and I'll just knit it through that way, but I don't know if you necessarily want to do that. But sometimes it doesn't matter for the knit stitches. Okay. Now the third row is where you're going to do that little twist, what the pattern calls RT, and I've provided the description for RT, what that means. It means right twist, where you're twisting the cable to the right. And on that third row, you start off with purl 2, so just purl the first 2 stitches. Now for a right twist, how that's worked is you have to knit the next 2 stitches together. So you can take your right needle and you're going to insert it through both front loops of those next 2 stitches, right? So insert, go ahead and knit, so bring the yarn through, but here's where you do not drop off these 2 stitches. Instead, you take your right needle and you reinsert it back into the first stitch of those 2 stitches, okay? And you knit it again. And now you drop both stitches of the left needle. And right there you've created a twist. We'll see that a couple more times. I'm just going to get this out of the way here so you can see a little bit better. The next 2 stitches are just a purl 2. And that's all you're doing. You're repeating a right twist, purl 2, right twist, purl 2. So let's see that right twist again. You're knitting the next 2 stitches together. But don't drop off the stitches on the left needle. Instead, take your right needle, reinsert it back into that first stitch, knit it, and now drop both stitches off. Okay, so you started off with 2 stitches, those 2 stitches that you knit together, and you created 2 new stitches. So you're not doing any decreases by doing this right twist. All you're doing is you're twisting those 2 stitches so that the stitches actually twist. Okay, so again, insert into both stitches, knit, then reinsert into the top stitch, knit, so you have your 2 stitches, and then drop the 2 stitches on the left needle. And that's your 3rd row. Right twist, purl 2. Let's do our last right twist. Insert, knit, reinsert, knit, and now drop both stitches and purl. And then row 4 is the same as row 2. So you're going to do a knit 2. I'm not going to go ahead and do it, but you'll just do a knit 2, purl 2, knit 2 all the way through, just like we did in row 2. So row 2 and row 4, row 2 and row 4 are the same. Row 1 and row 3 are different, and row 3 is where you're doing that twist. And so you just keep repeating those 4 rows, and with each repeat you kind of get this, you sort of get this the cable form. Okay, so I hope you give this one a try. If you have any questions, please leave me a comment. And if you want to see more of my videos, including hopefully I'll have videos on how to knit hats in the flat using this pattern, as well as a welted rib type pattern. I will be putting out those videos hopefully in the next few weeks. So please subscribe to my channel, Knittycat's Knits. As always, thanks so much for watching, and thanks for your support. Happy knitting.